Hey everyone, I'm Cameron Robertson, CEO of 3PL Systems. Welcome back to 3PL Live Sessions. I also have Michael Sternberg, my co-host here at 3PL Live Sessions. Today we're going to be talking about creating stickiness through transportation solutions. And I'd like to introduce our special guest, Erik Holck, CEO of Y Logistics. Erik, do you mind taking a minute and introducing yourself?
Sure. First, guys, thanks for having me on. We've developed a really good working relationship over the past couple of years, and really appreciate what you guys are doing. And being able to put something together like this to share value with other people is huge. So first off, thank you guys for doing this. I'm Erik Holck, CEO of Y Logistics. We are a transportation broker. We do things a little bit different here than a lot of your transportation brokers out there. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. Some of the different solutions, different approaches that we bring to the table.
Awesome. So we want to start off with what is stickiness and how do you create it inside of your organization?
Okay. And I know Mike and I have had some fun conversations about this, the topic of stickiness.
Oh yeah.
Look, for us, it's really at the most basic definition of it. It's what makes people coming back to you or staying connected to you in one way or another. The best way for me to kind of put this is to think about your favorite local business, right? It could be a restaurant, could be, a automotive repair shop. What is it that they do that keeps you coming back? Is it that feeling that you're cared for, that they know exactly what matters to you, that you're their go-to in the toughest situations, the worst times possible? That for us is kind of how we look at stickiness. We want to be that go-to. We want to be that trusted partner that knows the ins and outs of somebody's business that they're going to give their most complex challenges to. And that for us is the most important differentiator that we have, especially in an industry like transportation where it's so transactional in nature and a lot of people don't see the value in it. How do you create it? It all starts with trust. It all starts with relationships. It's providing value in every single interaction that you have and taking an approach of embracing challenges to deliver solutions to people when other people simply say, hey, right, like that's too difficult for us. That's too challenging. That's when we thrive, right? That's when we step up when things are tough. And that's really kind of how you create it. There's no real recipe to it. It's more about an approach.
So Erik, you mentioned while you were talking, giving that answer around, the difference between transactional and managed transportation, or at least you brought it up, right? And obviously freight brokerage, unfortunately, is becoming not even becoming, it has been a heavily commoditized service, right? People, a lot of there's a race to the bottom. But what we've seen at 3PL throughout our customer base and hundreds of brokers that we support, the ones that are growing and sustaining their businesses the best are focused more on managed trans. You guys at Y Logistics being one of them. So can you talk to me a little bit about transactional versus managed transportation, what the difference is between the two, and which one of those is more sticky? I think we know which one's more sticky, but can you kind of break that down for us?
Yep. So I'll answer the second question first. Which one's more sticky? 100% managed transportation. It's a different type of interaction, different relationship that you have. So I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to hear that answer. What's the difference between transactional transportation and managed transportation? For us, as we approach it, right? And I can only give you our definition. One is a means to an end, right? So the transactional business gives us the opportunity to establish a relationship, to then continue to build on that, to prove ourselves and how we approach things. Look, you want to get involved in the important work that your customers have. It doesn't come until you have trust. And the transactional relationship, right? The spot shipments, the spot quotes that you handle, that's the proving ground, right? How you handle those shipments, whether you give a shipment back, whether you go back for a rate increase, right? Whatever it is, that is going to be the basis on which the relationship is formed. So we have a very simple rule here, right? We really don't like to give freight back. we avoid it at all costs. We'll move stuff at a loss because we understand that the relationship is the single most important thing that we can do. When you're in a transactional transportation relationship, you're just a rate, right? And when you rate, you're a race to the bottom. I mean, we see it with a lot of large companies right now where there's things being said where they're operating at a loss right now. And we know it's only a matter of time before one of them starts going down the path of saying, hey, we need to increase rates. And then it's just going to snowball. So we operate with an approach where we'd say, hey, we'd much rather be the consistent ones that are going to just continue to focus on service. The transportation industry, it's a big ocean with a lot of sharks that have better tech, more resources, and deeper pockets, right? They take an approach where they can buy business. We'd rather prove that we can service the business and that we'll take care of you the right way.
Let me ask you another question on that, Erik, real quick. Let me interject. I apologize for interrupting you, but I'm curious. So you mentioned sometimes with a managed transportation relationship and when you're building that trust, you may lose out on a load. You may lose money because you're not going to give freight back. That's kind of your guys' strategy.
100%.
However, you also mentioned, obviously it's not sustainable to be buying up freight and losing it like some of these, people that are in the news, the convoys, what have you, right? Yeah. So how do you guys balance that, being like, hey, we might lose our ass sometimes, but not all the time. But yeah, I'm just curious how you guys look at balancing that.
It's tough, right? And a lot of it comes down to understanding how the relationship has developed, how it's been formed to this point, what has the conversation been, and kind of looking at it to assess the bigger opportunity. If we simply know that, hey, this is going to be a transactional customer, they always will be, they always have been, there's not the desire to have a simpler way of modeling their business and operating it, are we going to necessarily, be as focused on developing a relationship with that person as possible? No, it's got to be a reciprocal relationship, right? What's good for them and what's good for us, they both have to tie together. And that's a big piece of it. So that's a qualifier for us as we look at the managed transportation piece to really see, hey, is this a business that we want to spend the time to develop a deeper understanding of their business? Are they going to see the value in what we do? Is it worth taking the time and the steps to prove ourselves to these guys? Because we want to make sure there's that long-term relationship there. And right, for us, we love to solve the complex problems because a lot of people will walk away from it. And there's a ton of value that people find in that, because when you do the complicated stuff well, you're going to be that go-to. You're going to develop that level of trust. And right, our goal is to build that level of trust, prove ourselves, and then, like I said, be that go-to. You do that, you're going to be handling, managed transportation all day long.
Man, what an excellent answer, Erik. You had me thinking when you said that, and you mentioned at the very beginning of the call, we 3PL Systems and Y have built a very good working relationship, and I think it's because of what you just said. We recognize like, hey, these are guys that are going to value the work that we're putting in.
Right.
We're alike in that we want to solve complex problems. And this is a relationship where we want to spend time and invest. And you guys have done the same with us, right? And so before we lost that point, I want to make sure we echoed what you said at the beginning, which is like, hey, we heavily value the relationship we have with you and Jeff and the rest of your team over there at Y. So what excellent answer, Erik, for sure. Thank you.
Awesome.
So, Erik, another question that we have, transactional versus managed transportation, talking about the same subject, what is a mindset shift needed to approach the market differently on this?
Great question. A lot of people have a hard time figuring out exactly what this is. And the simplest way for me to phrase it is it's shifting a mindset from selling a service or a rate to selling value, right? Don't just think about it as selling, right, a truckload service or LTL or transportation in general, or right, whatever your rate is. Think about it as, what am I doing to make people's lives easier? End of the day, that's what everybody wants. Whether people are focused on making the business operation easier, making their own lives easier, that's what motivates people to make change, right? It's nothing more than that. I mean, a change in provider to save $5. Are there people out there that do it? Sure. Are they the ones that we want to talk to? No, not necessarily. But right, that's where you have to understand the motivators behind people. When you have a compelling value proposition, people will make significant changes in their operation. I mentioned it before, transactional work is a proving ground for this. So you need to understand that. You need to understand that you're gonna get kicked in the face a couple times early on in the relationship. And right, it's just like anybody coming into a working environment or a job. You're going to take your lumps in your first job. And then as you move through your career, you're going to learn more and more. It's just being able to embrace that kind of mindset and mentality. And I mean, for us, we have a lot of former athletes on the team, and that's one of the best things about athletes, right? They know how to take losses. In baseball, you succeed 3 out of 10 times, you're doing pretty well. So you gotta frame that right, put that in perspective. And another way to kind of look at it is to think about how doctors handle things. You don't go to a doctor and just they're going to write you a prescription. The doctor's going to take the time to ask questions, to figure out what's going on, to diagnose you before they start selling solutions. Shippers out there, they get hundreds of calls a day, and nothing is different, especially when you say, hey, right, I can have the best rate for you on truckloads from here to there. No, that's not going to do it, right? If you change your approach to focus on understanding what they're doing and how you can create value, it goes a long way in differentiating yourself. You want to solve problems, make people's lives easier. The goal should not be to move the shipment. It should be to understand their business and personal motivators. That's the mindset shift you got to take.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same even on the software side for us, is that you really have to understand what's really impacting them today. What can we do to help them in their day-to-day? What type of value can we provide? Because at the end of the day, it is about the value. And a lot of our customers, as you know, we provide software to a lot of brokerages. They start on the transactional side, but like Mike said earlier in the call, the ones that are growing are really focused on managed trans, and they're focused on the bigger picture on how they can grow their organization from that standpoint. They're not so much focused on just the transactional shipments. That gets them in the door, but what does long-term look like?
Yep.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, for you guys, right, as you think about it from the tech side, from the TMS side, you facilitate so many transactions. That's where you are a key part of how everything works. So you have to have the relationship there, right? Because you are essential to making things work. And if somebody just views you as a piece of tech, right, it's not going to help the business get to where it needs to go. And look, that's why we invest the time in a relationship with you guys, because your success is our success, right? The more we can do together, the better we can make things, the easier it becomes for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Erik, before we lose this point, you mentioned something about diagnosing kind of like a doctor and kind of, looking at the data and the information on hand to kind of make a recommendation. And look, you're one of the more analytical people I know. I know you can look at data and kind of glean some insights and tell some stories around it. So I think we would be doing our listeners a disservice if I didn't give you a chance to talk about how you view the role of analytics in selling managed transportation and telling stories with data, and how you do that to kind of articulate your service offerings.
Oh yeah. I'm a bit of a data nerd. I love to look at it. I like to see. I trust my gut. I've been in this long enough. I know what goes on, but I like to have the data prove me right. I'll easily have data proving my gut wrong, and I go with the data decision. It's an art, right? It's a science and an art. The data analytics, looking at data, interpreting it, making good assessments, that's the science side, right? The art side of it is taking what you know from the conversation and applying it to that and figuring out how do you interpret things. I mean, we ask people for a year's worth of data and they kind of look at us like we have three heads. And I explain to them, I say, hey, right, if you want to start with one piece, give us 3 months of data. Let us take a look at that. But I can guarantee you, we're going to come back and we're going to ask you for a year. So do you want to go through the exercise of pulling data once or twice? So just give us the data up front. Let us see what the full trend looks like so that we can make assessments. And it's amazing what you can see when you get that data set to identify trends that they might not be seeing, looking at things differently. I mean, we have customers in the refrigerated space that basically say, hey, right, like we're going to go through, we're going to map out multi-stop truckloads, everything that we've done, right? We got years of science and history behind it. Okay, great. So we go in, we take a look at it. We're like, so I understand you have years of experience behind this, but have you ever thought about doing this, and that? And they're like, oh, how'd you figure that out? I said, remember that year's worth of data I asked for? There you go. And it's incredible what can happen when you apply the logic that you know about the account from the experiences that you've gained with what the actual data is telling you, and understand what the motivations of the people are that you're talking to, right? If they're looking for a simpler process, if they want less trucks coming into their facility, if they have, only 4 dock doors and they're loading out 100 trucks a day and they're saying, hey, this is way too complicated. Okay, well, how do we solve for less trucks in there? And if that's the case, okay, it's more consolidated truckloads to final mile partners to reduce that. So we can take you from 100 trucks a day down to 80 trucks a day. Does that sound good? And if that's the case, sure, right? Like if they want less trucks, we gave them that solution. We solved for the problem that they want to solve.
So when you're looking at the data, Erik, you're looking mainly for like trends and trend lines and things that are common occurrences and recurring themes within the data that kind of stand out to you to say like, well, there's something that happens all the time. We could, I call them splinters. Like, right, there's a splinter, that's a pain point, and it's not going to hurt unless I push on the splinter, right? And so once you push on the splinter, it hurts like hell. If you're not pushing on it, it doesn't hurt, right? And so effectively, you're looking for those trends and those splinters per se to push on when you're selling it through the data. That makes sense.
Well, I would also say you can figure out what those splinters are if you ask the right questions in the qualification process. You should not go looking at data until you have an understanding of what you're trying to solve for. Because if you do, you could go down, the rabbit holes in different directions and, lose a bunch of time. But if you're having the right conversations, you're going to figure out early on in the process what it is that you need to solve for, right? If it's less trucks coming in a day, if it's right overall less transportation spend, if it's right better MABD compliance, whatever it is, that's what you got to solve for. So if you ask the right questions, your customer partners will make it easy for you to figure out what you need to solve for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, data really is a future of all business, in my opinion. If you're a brokerage today, not taking advantage of data analytics and deploying that within your organization for your customers and even yourselves, I do think that you're going to be headed towards the exit door because it's so powerful. Data just shows everything you need to know about a customer, about your business, about things that you might not be aware of. So utilizing that to your advantage is a powerful thing. So switching gears here, why does a lot of refrigerated LTL multi-stop loads? Talk to us about managed transportation and how that plays into it. So into your offering, doing all these different modes.
The refrigerated market is extremely difficult and unique to navigate, which anybody that's involved in it knows that. Why? Because there's not a whole lot of national solutions out there. And most of the national solutions that are out there, or kind of the traditional solutions, have their challenges to it, whether it's service issues, whether it's temperature issues, whether it's transit time issues, whatever it might be, there's challenges with that. So as you approach a managed transportation solution in the refrigerated space, you have to really understand what those variables are and what the challenges are that create these problems for people. There's really, if you talk with 5 different shippers, right, they're all handling refrigerated LTL a different way, whether it's LTL, consolidated truckload, right, multi-stop, final mile, partners involved in it. It's all done differently because of the fact that there is no national solution to it. So coming up with a solution for people requires really that in-depth knowledge, and it's really hard to segment a refrigerated solution if you're trying to give that up to 5, 6 different carriers, right? Because the volume's not there. You're not going to get the level of pricing. You're not going to drive efficiency. You're not going to drive density in the trucks. So as you look at refrigerated solutions, anybody that's moving LTL or, right, a variation of LTL, again, multi-stop truckload, something like that, it's easier for them to group it together so that you have visibility to 100% of the orders that are moving. Because if you're only given 50% of the volume, you can't necessarily drive some of the cost saving opportunities that you could if you had 100% of the volume. So when you're looking at a managed transportation solution, that's basically, hey, it's saying these guys are handling everything for us. So go do it, execute on it, right? We're going to assess you on a monthly basis on how good you're doing, right? And what that assessment could be is, right, MABD compliance. It could be cost per pound, whatever the metric is. If you establish that early on in the process, it's easy enough to go through and say, hey, are we living up to your expectations? But again, that comes with volume. It comes with opportunity. It comes with understanding the business model. So, right, as you look for the opportunity to create these solutions, managed transportation is a key, especially in the refrigerated space. I hope I answered it kind of to give you enough detail of what you guys were looking for there.
You did. It's look, I think for anybody who's not in the space, ourselves included, because we've talked to you a lot about this, it's very deep and specific to, you know, what you guys are doing. It's not like other modes of transportation. It's not like other LTL. It's not like truckload. It's very, very nuanced and different. And while I was listening to you talk, it was interesting to kind of think about the way that you gain this trust, to kind of tie it back to some of the topics from the beginning of the call, is through displaying subject matter expertise and being someone who your customers like, hey, this Erik guy knows what the hell he's talking about, actually. And so short of going to work for your customers and actually like working for one of these shippers, how the hell would you go about getting that subject matter expertise to actually position yourself with someone who knows what you're talking about?
The easiest answer is time, right? It's time in the industry, time in a business, time with having conversations with people. But to break it into kind of smaller groups, it's, you know, you have to network. You have to network with people in the industry to understand what's going on, to learn who the providers are, go out there and do it. You have to build relationships. Nobody's going to share information without a certain level of trust. You have to ask really, really good questions and kind of be relentless in that. And that comes from seeking, right, asking questions to understand, not to respond. So genuinely take an interest in understanding how things work and how people operate. Don't sell, right? Diagnose, as we talked about before. It's for us too. I mean, our approach to it is, we focused very heavily on a specific area because we understand the challenges associated with that. So you can't be everything to everybody. And if you try to be, you're spreading yourself way too thin. So that's why we take a very targeted approach to some of the things that we work on. And as we develop solutions, right, and as we prospect, it's very targeted in our approach because we know who we can help based on, right, their modes of transit, who they're shipping to, all this stuff, because we've taken the time to develop the expertise on that. You know, and the last piece is through everything I just said, right, through networking, building relationships, ask good questions. You have to build trust. If people don't trust you, they're not going to share any information with you. And you have to be genuine in your approach to them. You have to offer some sort of value in return of, hey, like, you know, I'm here to talk through problems with you. that's really what it comes down to, is building trust to then ask questions, take a good approach to things. If there's trust, people will share a lot more with you. You know, shippers will let you look under the hood of the car to see what's going on and what's wrong. So all those things, it's a lot. That's why I said time first, because it takes time.
No, I agree. It's time. Time is the biggest one. Anyone new to selling TMS, I'll tell them, like, listen, the reason it looks this way when Cameron and I have these conversations is because I've been here for 7.5 years. Cameron's been here for 12 plus years. That's why it looks the way it does, is because the time, you can't replicate that. It's impossible. But you can start early, and you can learn, and you can be inquisitive, and you can be genuine and just seek it, I think is really good advice. So Cameron, you want to take it from here, man?
Yeah, one of the things you said is not being everything to everyone. I think I learned that earlier on in my career, and sometimes you want to please everyone, and falling into that trap is a terrible trap to fall into. So I've learned from it. So yeah, no, Erik, we want to thank you for coming on 3PL Live Sessions today. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
I did a lot of talking, guys. I think I'm shot. I think that's probably all I got for you. My brain is probably fried right now.
All right. At least this. Where can people find you? How can they contact you? Yep.
So you can get a hold of us. Y Logistics website is y-logistics.com. Telephone number is 908-274-0333. We've got business development team out there that's more than happy to help anybody that's running into any challenges or wants to take a different approach to transportation. So always happy to have a conversation and just logic check some things that are done. Any of you that know me, right, I'm always here for any sort of just logic check that you need. I mean, Cam, Mike, you guys know that from our conversations.
Absolutely.
Very much so.
Absolutely.
That drives value.
Line, Erik. All right, Erik, thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thanks, man.
Really appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, talking about next week's show, I believe we are going to have Microsoft on our call next week. We are going to be talking about AI, ML, and how they utilize it, as well as how you can utilize it within your company. We want to thank everyone for joining today, as always, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll all talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.